Buddy, welcome back to another episode of Fintech Fridays. Um, I've kind of been taking this show and a little bit of a sidetrack lately, and it's been fun to do that. And so today we're going to really take a sidetrack. We're going to talk about the mobile phone industry. No, 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 no. We're not going to do that. But we are going to talk with an expert, an executive from T-Mobile, Sephali Thakkar. Sephali, thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Brian.
So this will be, just so you know, this will be the first husband and wife guest on my podcast. I had Beju on, your husband, probably over a year ago, and we stayed in the zone. We stayed in the mortgage technology zone on our conversation. But Beju and I had the opportunity to catch up when I was in Dallas a few weeks back, and he suggested that you and I connect. We had a couple great conversations, and I want to explore how T-Mobile is kind of intersecting with financial literacy and really playing a pivotal role in helping our schools across the country with that endeavor. So with that, again, welcome.
Thank you. Well, Brian, one of the things that's really a blocker in many situations, especially when we think about public education, is funding. And that has been a topic of conversation with many of our clients. And one of the things that's not negotiable is connectivity and access for all when we're thinking about the way teaching and learning has evolved over the last decade. And I would say even more so since the days of the pandemic, right? We've, as educators, really pivoted and learned how to digitize learning. So we've been able to put a lot of our work in the space of accessibility tools on devices, and many districts have moved to like one-to-one initiatives. And what's hard is we've had federal funds that have been given to us from ESSER and others, which now no longer exist. Those funds have depleted, but we can't go back to teaching the way we used to because our students and their needs have changed. And
Right.
so what do we do to kind of create sustainable funding channels for our school districts? How do we leverage public funds that are given to us by our state from our, TEA here in Texas, and really then starting to think through strategic grants that our districts can then apply for a year ahead of time, or sometimes short-term grants with foundations and other nonprofits kind of supporting that. So here at T-Mobile for Education, we're long-term partners in public education. We want to start thinking through sustainable funding models, sustainable ways we can build these partnerships to really bridge communities and really leverage the funds that we have all of our stakeholders already investing in, everything from city and state funds all the way up through and including federal funds from things like E-rate. We just want to be thought partners. We want to help close that communication gap that sometimes happens. And in the world of telecom, I think if we had to have a pet peeve, it's the communication gap. We
Right.
bring people together. We are the source of how we help leverage connectivity and collaboration, and really want to leverage those with our leadership networks and really start thinking through strategic approaches to building these communities. And so the short answer to your question is we want to help support that financial sustainability in districts, in charter schools, in nonprofits, in every avenue that we get to support in, from city and state government all the way upward, and including really kind of thinking through even blind platforms, whether they're consortiums and things like that, that we can help support just educating. I think some of the things that we as an industry sometimes struggle with is when you think T-Mobile, people think about phones and hotspots.
Right.
Well, that hasn't changed. We still do phones and hotspots. However, we do so much more. We have over 2,000 partners that do buyback programs for devices that might have been outdated. Maybe they did a 5-year cycle, and in sending things home back and forth, things have gotten damaged or things just need to be refreshed because all things change. And even
Yeah.
technology, now that we're like really thinking about leveraging our 5G network to think about connectivity without the wired solutions, without even the Wi-Fi solutions in some places when our kids go whether it's on school buses or athletic buses and in other spaces that they're doing their work in parks. It
Yeah.
helps to have a connected device. It helps to have this tiny little computer that we're constantly carrying to capture the experience and write their own narrative. So really become innovators of teaching and learning, where kids are no longer consuming content. They're actually becoming creators of that content. And how do we empower that future facing, innovative approach to teaching and learning so that the resources for devices doesn't become a blocker? The
Right.
connectivity doesn't become a blocker. And most importantly, the financial stability to sustain initiatives that are innovative doesn't become a blocker. That's the hard part, I think, that we're struggling with a lot of our content and curation for our folks who we get to partner with.
I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to take us down this little path. So you're in Dallas, I'm in Greater Detroit. Um, I shared with you that I sit on the board of an after-school education nonprofit, the Downtown Boxing Gym. Boxing's in our name only. We don't teach boxing. We really our motto is books before boxing. But what's been fascinating for me as a board member for the last 6 years now is really understanding now clearly the difference in support and resources in the Detroit Public School District versus I'll pick on a school district in Oakland County, which is just north of Wayne County, which is where Detroit sits, the Birmingham School District. It's somewhere in the magnitude of 8 to 10 times less funding per student in the Detroit Public School District. And so when we think about tools and resources and connectivity, it hits me, and I think I understand that that's a pure example of where the differences lie in primarily white school districts versus primarily African American school districts. And so you guys you're helping solve for some of those inequities across districts. Can we maybe take it down a level and maybe for the audience help us understand, like in a practical sense, in a particular building, in a school with 30 students in this classroom, how T-Mobile's resources kind of come to life for those students and the teachers there?
So what we've had the opportunity to do, I love your question and I like the context of thinking through what I would say leveraging public funds to really level the playing field for all learners. I
Right.
think a lot of the things that what you've kind of alluded to is we have some nonprofit partners like the one that you're on the board of,
Yeah.
where we get to work with passion projects. We have one that we work with in, Dallas Fort Worth area right here. There's a girls camp that does STEM initiatives to really get girls access to technology equipment so they can become podcasters and narrate their
Sure.
story and really capture the stories of generational narrative of how downtown Dallas area has evolved and changed in populace and in economics, as well as in just the infrastructure, right? So we get to work with them to say, okay, what do you need? Oh, so you need this many connected iPads so that they can do those videos? Okay. They need to be able to take those from point A to point B. So then when they go and interview a potential candidate for their podcast, they have the opportunity to record, upload, and download the video and the audio in a way that makes sense for them and really leverage that 5G network. Who can we bring to the table? Oh, wait, we're partnered with Apple. Can we find a way to bring corporate funds to bring down the cost of those iPads so that we can really kind of leverage just you all take up a nonprofit, like let's write a small grant. And can we have High Tech High Heels, one of your foundation grants folks, fund the connectivity piece? And if they can fund the connectivity piece and we can bring our partners from Apple to kind of bring down the cost of those iPads to collaborate for this special project for the GEMS Camp folks, let's make that happen. That's a
Right.
small example, right? Let's make that bigger. This is an organization that works with other school systems in after school programs, right? So when we're thinking about Dallas ISD, these same girls go to Dallas ISD. So
Yeah.
how do we bring that into the classroom? Can we leverage a partnership with Dallas libraries? Can they have a checkout program for connected devices?
Mm,
Can we work with them to see if the library funds allow for that kind of a passion project? Okay, what's the next layer that we can think through? Are there libraries in schools? And since elementary schools generally don't have a lot of time devoted to science because we are so heavily focused on literacy and math, and unfortunately, that's my sad personal loss because my lifelong commitment to STEM education kind of suffers because we're not planting those seeds early on. How can
right.
we empower them? Well, we have another nonprofit partner that we work with, talkstem.org. It's in a local space that are still kind of going through their development of apps with SMU and some of their community partners for a 2-year initiative to kind of get this app out called Math Finder to start thinking through giving every child a STEM identity and every child an opportunity to really engage in place-based learning. Can we leverage the resources that are standards aligned that this nonprofit research-based organization is working on and bring that into the elementary classrooms? Maybe we can kit a 10 device checkout program or a program that stays in the elementary schools and let the library media specialists take that on as an extension to their makerspace, where
Mm,
they can now make videos for their walks on their campus, in their playground, in their spaces, in their own neighborhoods. And let's take it to the community center. Or can they take it to the zoo? Can they take it to the arboretum? Yeah, because those are the big pie in the sky dreams we want to make happen. But it doesn't take a lot of money. It just takes a lot of great thinkers with a dream to kind of come together and partner to do these passion projects. I just crossed paths with a nonprofit here in Dallas last week that does that with literacy initiatives in elementary schools and specifically Title I elementary schools. I don't see why that can't be done with the lens of digital literacy,
right.
since that's the birthright of this age group that we are now getting to teach. Like this generation, when they are out in the workforce in 15 years from now, that's going to be a not without which for them. And so initiatives like this, passion projects, collaboration, and really getting into the infrastructure of how these things come to fruition and being those long-term partners in the work will, I think, help mitigate that digital divide, that inequity that we sometimes see. And that doesn't mean that the same solution can't serve a private school or a
Sure.
charter school or another school that already has some funds allotted to these kind of initiatives. It just means that we sometimes have to rub elbows with folks that have the same vested interest in elevating access for all. And there are plenty of organizations in almost every community.
Oh,
We
yeah.
just have to help get them to talk to each other. And we get to do
Um,
that at T-Mobile for Education.
and I'm going to come back to that one because there's two things that have popped into my head based on what you just described. The first, I described the difference between Detroit public schools and Birmingham, and I was thinking just purely on traditional funding from the state, right, per student. But when you said this term digital divide, and that really lit a light bulb for me because if we think about the current, this current generation of students, call them grade 1 through 12, frankly, they are literally the first native digital generation, right? And the concept of digital divide is going to be in when we think about inequities in communities, it's going to be more evident in this generation probably than any prior generation because you've got, again, you've got the first the digital native generation. And if I just happen to be in a district or community that has fewer resources, less connectivity, all the stuff that then when you compare me to someone that's in it just happens to be in a community with it's fully resourced and fully connected, man, that's a scary proposition on how far that divide can be. And you guys, like that, now it's clear to me where T-Mobile education plays such a pivotal role in for this country and beyond.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think we get to do, and Brian, I can be very transparent. This is my second career. I spent 27 years serving public education from New York City public schools, where I started my career, all the way up through and including Allen ISD here in Texas. In that 27-year span, from 9/11 to Uvalde, those are the two pivotal parts of my career that have shaped my personal trajectory into the work of teaching and learning. Safety and security has been paramount to me personally and professionally. And I can't imagine a space where we won't want our kids to be safe all the time.
Right.
And I'm talking about physical safety because it's always been Maslow before Bloom. If you can't make sure those kids are fed well, that they feel safe, they feel connected, they feel like they belong, then teaching them and asking them to be creative and innovative and collaborative is that next level of being able to be producers and not just having an apathetic kind of experience in teaching and learning, right? How do we get our kids there? Well, we also have to secure their digital safety.
Right.
And we have to create this culture of collaboration, communication, and kind of thinking through creativity where they know about digital citizenship. They know about how they can leverage tools with an attentive mind toward ethics, right? When we're thinking about should I use AI platforms to create? If so, how? And when is it appropriate to really kind of leverage the technology we have access to as a starting place? But how can we make it so that it's authentically my own creation still?
Right.
And it's a part of their learning journey now. And we as educators are still kind of new to the game because we aren't digital natives. We kind of have adapted and learned and grew that skill set over time, right? And so how do we help our kids become digital citizens and really responsible with the technology that they're empowered with, without always kind of saying the mantra of put the phone down,
Right.
or no, you can't use, right? Like it's so much easier. And I kind of lean into my parenting hat when I do this. It's, when we've got digital natives that we get to raise, how do we put out safe boundaries for them, saying this is a good time to use your device.
Right.
This is probably not a good time for you to be on your device, and this is why. And how do we coach them and mentor them and then become a little bit like hands off? Okay, now you got it. The training wheels are off. Now you got to ride that bike, kid. Similarly, like here are the guardrails. I put them in place for you. Here's the parameters. Here are the rubrics. We're going to talk it through. We're going to walk it through. But in the end, you're going to give me a product. And how much of that product is authentically yours, right?
Crazy.
It's a tough conversation. We were not trained how to do this 27
No.
years ago when I came out of undergrad with my lifelong educator degree. Like these are new things we're now dealing with and grappling with. And what do we need is that community in our leadership, that empowerment from industry partners to come and teach us, to train us, to work with us. If we don't know how to use AI technology to be productive adults, we can't teach it to our kids.
So good.
It's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So we're still learning, I think. And that's that lifelong journey I think educators have taken up.
Well, this has been, for me personally, super educational, no pun intended. You've given myself a lot to think about and chew on and to take back to the nonprofit that I serve, but hopefully for our audience, everyone has a different perspective on education across communities and specifically, under-resourced communities. And then more importantly, or as important, how a company like T-Mobile is like right square in the center of helping solve for what is a a pretty big issue for us in this country.
Well, thank you for having me. I've really learned a lot from even fielding some of your questions and your interests on the work that we get to do. And we're still designing and building it, Brian. So I would love to have a follow-up
Oh
conversation
yeah,
maybe in a few months' time to tell you how we've leveraged some of the other things, to give you a few more success models of how we've been able to really kind of think through solutions with some of our partners.
I would love to do that. For my audience, I'm going to recommend that you follow Sephali on LinkedIn, and follow her content as this story continues to get told digitally on platforms like LinkedIn. So Sephali, is great to chat with you today. Thank you so much for sharing with our audience here on FinTech Fridays.
I appreciate you, Brian. Thanks.
We'll talk soon. For
Bye.
everybody else, we'll see you in 2 weeks back on FinTech Fridays.